Welcome to episode 73 of Driver Suit Blog Radio. As always, I'm your host, David G. Firestone. With last week's Angry Rants done, we're going to go back to news, and we're going to start with two streaming service news stories that do sort of correlate with each other. Now, we're going to start with Peacock because it's becoming ever and more clear that NBC is getting desperate for the state of Peacock. I mean, if they lose the $3 billion that they claim they're going to this year, it'll amount to $7.5 billion in losses. NBC is desperate, so much so that the NFL will exclusively stream a playoff game for the NFL on Peacock. Now, according to ESPN, link in the description, quote, "The Peacock exclusive game on January 13th will start at 8:15 or 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. The game will be broadcast on NBC stations in the markets of the two teams. It will also be available on the mobile devices through the NFL Plus package. It will be preceded by a late afternoon playoff game on NBC and Peacock that will kick off at 4 p.m. Eastern Time." I mean, that's how much more desperate can NBC get at this point? Now, I bring this up because in a related news story, the Sports Business Journal, link in the description, is reporting that NASCAR may move the Xfinity Series to a streaming-only platform. According to the article, quote, "NASCAR appears likely to move its Xfinity Racing Series exclusively to a streaming company, according to several sources. At least two companies have showed interest in that second-tier package. NASCAR is also shopping mid-season package of NASCAR races to streaming companies, loosely patterned after the 6-race package that TNT carried until 2014. Because if there was one broadcasting company that NASCAR fans truly loved, it was frickin' TNT. And Amazon is considered a strong candidate to land these streaming packages. Nothing is close to being finalized, but sources predict that NASCAR will have handshake deals before the July 4th holiday on its new broadcast and streaming deals. NASCAR executives have showed a willingness to carve out a midsummer package for races for a streaming company. NASCAR's midsummer races generally post solid TV audiences against little competition, but the number of people watching television this summer drops considerably, and NASCAR executives believe it's a midsummer move to streaming that will not have as big of an audience drop as races in the spring or fall." Now, end quote. Now, I get what they're trying to do, but, as a fan and as somebody who's had to purchase streaming services in recent years, I can tell you without sarcasm or hyperbole and with a lot of confidence, this is not going to work. Fans are going to leave. When the ratings are what they are and they're not going up, and in some cases they're even going down significantly, why would you willingly give fans more reasons to leave? I mean, how much more evidence do you need that the streaming wars are ending with the loss of everyone? There's maybe a few of them that are making money, but most streaming services are losing money, hand over fist, to the point that popular shows are being dropped because these streaming platforms can't afford to pay for them. Now, if these streaming services do win, who else wins? Well, the teams, drivers, and fans of NASCAR lose, sponsors lose, and even if NASCAR does make money, most of the critical people involved will lose money and they'll lose viewers. I really don't understand how people think that the streaming service wars is going to end in anything other than total defeat. We've seen it as it starts raining a little bit. We've seen it and it just isn't working. I really hope, I really hope that this outcome doesn't happen. But sadly, it probably will. Now we're going to go to a news story concerning the Chicago street race. As I've mentioned before, I was wondering who Chicago and the street race would choose as a food vendor. Well, to my utter shock and amazement, they actually made the right move. On May 19th, it was announced that Let Us Entertain You restaurants will be the food provider for the street race. According to the press release, these restaurants under the Let Us Entertain You banner will include RPM Restaurants, Bub City, Sushi Shan, Cafe Baba Riba, Summer House, Hub 51, the Oakville Grill and Cellar, and Tallboy Taco. Now, as I said, this is a great move. But anybody who lives in the Chicago area knows very well about Lettuce Entertain You. I myself loves me some RJ Grunts, which is the original Lettuce Entertain You restaurant, which is still active in Lincoln Park to this day. Now, even if you don't live in the Chicago area, you may have eaten at Corner Bakery Cafe or Maggiano's Little Italy. Oh, Maggiano's. Amazing mushroom ravioli. Well, those two national chains were founded by Lettuce Entertain You restaurants. I mean, I've said a lot of negative things about the Chicago street race because of the way it's being handled. I don't have a lot of confidence given the regime change in Chicago that's taken place. But this was the right move to make. This was the right move to make. And again, if you're not from Chicago, Lettuce Entertain You probably doesn't mean much. If you're from Chicago, you know exactly what it means. So our last NASCAR news story is a sad one, because it proves that even though NASCAR is changing for the better, some fans aren't. Now, according to an article in The Drive, link in the description, after the All-Star Race at North Wilkesboro Speedway, I'm going to talk about that more in the next segment, some asshole racist fan decided it would be a good idea to hack into Bubba Wallace's radio and said, amongst other things, "Go back where you came from, asshole. You're not wanted in NASCAR." Now, most of the reports that I've seen state that Wallace did not hear the transmission in question. Now, how did something like this happen? Well, again, according to the same article, quote, "In crowded radio environments like a racetrack, it's common to use a system like CTCSS that requires the transmitting radio to apprehend a series of coded tones at the start of each transmission. Without these tones, Wallace's radio wouldn't have let the transmission through." Now, these tones can be captured and spoofed, but this basic technique is enough to prevent unsophisticated users from interfering with transmissions. So the article in question also goes on to state the possibility that NASCAR would encrypt radio transmissions like they do in Formula One. This could conceivably happen. And I promise you that if stupid shit like this keeps happening, NASCAR might not have any other choice. And it says a lot about the quote-unquote traditional NASCAR fan base. The low IQ, white Southern, idiots who still seem to think segregation should be a thing even though it's completely pointless. Who thinks racism is a good thing even though it's the stupidest thing ever. I mean, I really hope that something is done about this. I really hope change comes. And I'm a NASCAR fan. I speak for a lot of NASCAR fans. I'm embarrassed about this. I'm disgusted about this. And this shit has no place in the modern era. Period. Okay, with that, I'm going to take my first break, and then I'll discuss the All-Star Race at North Wilkesboro in a little more detail. Welcome back. As a 1990s NASCAR fan, I was sad to see North Wilkesboro Speedway disappear from the NASCAR Cup Series circuit. And the fact that it died so that Texas Motor Speedway could be a thing on the Cup Series circuit is basically twisting the knife. The last race at any track is sad, but for North Wilkesboro, it truly was heartbreaking. For a track as steeped in tradition and steeped as history and as steeped as North Carolina as North Wilkesboro was, it was sort of the beginning of the new era of NASCAR. But what makes it even worse is that the track's steady decline thereafter was significantly worse. Once the fans and drivers left, the track was pretty much abandoned and left to rot. Nature took over, there was a lot of damage. And for a lot of people, it was mostly assumed that the Speedway's days were numbered. Since in recent years, it's become clear that the land that the track was on is worth more than the track itself in many instances. And this has spelled doom for a lot of racetracks in recent years, especially on the NHRA. Now, originally there were plans to scrap the Speedway and sell the land, but fortunately it never came to pass. Now, in 2009, there was a bit of a revitalization where the track held some minor league races, including Chase Elliott winning one of them. That only lasted until 2011, and the decline began again. Nature took over, and the track was left to rot. But 2019 is when change really began. The track was cleared of all debris to be scanned for iRacing, and in 2020, the track was made available for iRacing. On November 18, 2021, North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper signed the 2021-2022 North Carolina state budget, which allocated $40 million for Charlotte Motor Speedway, Rockingham Speedway, and North Wilkesboro Speedway. This bill made the track financially viable, which in turn led to the North Wilkesboro Racetrack Revival, which had a lot of races, brought several notable names, and brought fans back to the track in droves. Now, be it luck or fate, depending on what you believe in, the NASCAR All-Star Race had been moved to Texas Motor Speedway. And again, depending on luck or fate, depending on what you believe in, the 2022 NASCAR All-Star Race at Texas was a disaster. It was a mediocre race at best. It had bad officiating and a very controversial finish. Now, after that race, depending on who you ask, either NASCAR chose to move the race or Fox Sports gave them an ultimatum. Well, one thing led to another, and on September 8th, 2022, NASCAR announced that the All-Star Race would be moving to North Wilkesboro for 2023. This announcement was instantly met with universal praise. And even after it was announced, there were people who were thinking, nah, this probably might not happen, something like that. But one thing led to another, and the track was ready for racing, and it was a great race. It just brought back so many memories, and when I watched the race, and this was the first race since the 1996 Tyson Holly Farms 400 on September 29th, 1996, it was worth the wait. I don't like short track racing. I've said that before. I'm a super speedway guy. I like street courses and road courses. This was an amazing race. They had a hot crowd who were very into it. The fans obviously left happy, and the drivers were happy, and it just got good ratings. What more could you ask for? And it felt like 96 all over again, because I watched a race at North Wilkesboro Speedway, and then I watched the new episode of Beavis and Butthead a few days later. I'm just the kid in me is happy, and I hope that this track stays on the circuit for a long time, because this was a great race and a great look. NASCAR and other sanctioning bodies and states need to preserve these tracks. I mean, even if they are only used for like local or even regional racing, even if they're only in the Truck Series or the Xfinity Series, or even in the amateur leagues of the NHRA or IHRA, I think that an SRX race on this track would be perfect. Perfect. Now again, I haven't seen the schedule for SRX yet, but I think SRX and North Wilkesboro would be a perfect combination. This is the kind of race that reminds you that racing really needs to remember its roots, and events like this are a perfect way to do so. If NASCAR has a brain in their skull, this will be the permanent home of the All-Star Race, because why wouldn't it be? Why wouldn't it be? And with that little diatribe, I'm going to discuss some stuff that's not related to NASCAR or North Wilkesboro for the next segment, and I'll be right back. Welcome back. For our final segment, I'm going to do a news story, but before that, I've got a few things I need to do. Now, number one, I was planning a deep dive on a baseball story I came across, but given the amount of information I have to go through, this is taking significantly longer than I planned. It's going to be worth it, I promise you, but you're just going to have to bear with me because time is not on my side. Now, with that, before I get to our final news story, I'm going to give some life advice to people because I want to make you better people. I want to give you the ability to be a better person and leave this world a little bit of a better place than when I came to it. And I have to say this, given some of the things that have happened at work over the last few weeks. In life, sometimes things just don't work out your way. You go to a restaurant and they're out of your favorite dish. You go to the barber and it's closed. It's happened to us all. It sucks, but it happens. If you're the kind of person that you can be flexible and understanding and accept the fact that the world doesn't revolve around you and things will happen that are out of your control, you're a good person. If you're the kind of person who becomes a Karen when these kinds of things happen, no matter where you are, don't expect to be welcomed back. Nobody cares how long you've been a customer. Nobody wants to hear what you think you're entitled to. If something beyond the business's control happens, just deal with it. Products don't just magically teleport from the factory to the store shelves. There's a lot of steps in between. And sometimes one or more of these steps can be interrupted and cause problems. Especially in an era where there's a labor shortage and there's still supply chain issues. Because again, I work in retail, we do constantly have supply chain issues. It's not within our control. If you work in retail as long as I have, you understand this, because everyone thinks that they're special. Everyone thinks that they're entitled to special treatment, or that the rules don't apply, or that the rules are unfair. You are not entitled, and they do apply to you. Talk about what you think you're entitled to all you want. The world will never make good on what you think you're entitled to. Get used to it. There's 7 billion people in the world, and you're no more important than any of them. And again, if something goes wrong and it's the store's fault, the store will do what they can to make good. That's just how it is. But if you want to act like a spoiled little baby, you won't be allowed back in the store. If something goes wrong and you act like a mature adult, you'll be treated as such and welcomed back in the store with open arms. And I can tell you this right now, stores are cracking down on this. The era of the customer is always right is officially over. Karens killed it. And for a lot of people, whether it be at retail, shopping at retail stores, or at work themselves, you're expendable. If the squeaky wheel doesn't want to... The nail that stands up will be pounded flat, and nails that won't stay pounded flat can be removed and replaced with nails that can. Nobody's going to miss you, and your existence won't even be acknowledged. That's just how it is, and I'm tired of the spoiled attitude, and I speak for a lot of people in retail when I say that we are too. The rest of us are too, so grow up and deal with it, okay? Now, with that out of the way, a news story happened recently that was mind-boggling. I never thought I would say what's about to come out of my mouth, and I never thought I would see the day when this happens, but something amazing happened in Joliet a few weeks ago. To the utter surprise of every American motorsports fan, and again, I can't believe I'm about to say this, Wickware Racing won an event. I know, I'll give you a second to just let your brain process that. Specifically, Wickware Racing run the top fuel category of the Gerber Collision and Glass NHRA Route 66 Nationals presented by Peak Performance. Can you make that race name any needlessly longer? And I'm going to be talking about that with NASCAR in a few weeks, hopefully, but we'll get to that at some point. But Clay Millican beat the odds and gave Wickware Racing their first race win on four wheels in any major American auto racing category. To that I say, congratulations. You've been in the game for decades, you've spent millions of dollars to race in pretty much every top category of American auto racing, and for the first time, you've earned a real trophy. Congratulations. Golf clap. Of course I'm being sarcastic. Of course I'm mocking Wickware Racing. I'm not backing down from this sentiment. Every business needs at least one employee who needs to say at certain points, this isn't working, it never really is going to work, so shut it down. I could cite many examples. The Arch Deluxe was part of a line of sandwiches from McDonald's. It's considered to be the worst failure in food service history. Somebody in the company said, this isn't working, shut it down. The EV1. Billions of dollars spent creating an electric car, and with the best scientific brains and the best automobile engineers, you created a useless car that could basically be only used to drive to and from work. Someone involved said, shut it down. Wickware Racing, a team that has done nothing with a lot, still operates. In a sport where even the most successful of teams cannot turn a profit, how does Wickware Racing even survive? I mean, you've had teams that have won Cup Series championships gone under, yet a team with no real successes of any kind prior to a few weeks ago is somehow operating at any capacity? How does that work? How does a team that is almost always at the back of the pack, almost never is seen on camera except for when they wreck, they never have onboard cameras, their driver roster changes from week to week, their crew members change from week to week, they're lucky to score a top 15, never mind a top 10, how do they continue to get sponsors? It's beyond me. How this team keeps two cars on track full-time despite no tangible results of any kind is beyond me. What are they saying to sponsors to get them to sign up? And think about this. Kyle Larson is a championship winning driver who just won the All-Star Race. He's a championship caliber driver. Outside of I believe it's an Asian restaurant company, he can't get sponsorships outside of his team owner's brand, HendrickCars.com. Yet Wickware Racing, they have proven themselves useless from almost the start of their existence, and they somehow get sponsors. How? Can anyone name like the last two drivers who raced from Wickware Racing without looking them up on Google? With Clay Millican's win at the Route 66 Nationals, something got proven recently, and that is Wickware Racing should just give up on oval tracks at this point. You've done nothing of any real significance, so just give up on that and focus on the sport where you now have success. Focus on drag racing. When it comes to the NHRA, a lot less money is needed, sponsorship is easier to accomplish, they have a solid fan base that has good attendance figures, and they get good television numbers. There are more chances to win, and there's a lot of room for upward mobility. After a decade of pretty much just being irrelevant, other than being mocked for being the bottom of the shelf team. They won their first NHRA event after, I think, less than a year in the sport. They have no success of any kind of oval track racing, but they've proven that they can win in the NHRA. Rick, listen to me very carefully. Go with what works. Your lifelong ambition of being something in NASCAR is officially over. Even if you win an oval track race at this point, the writing is on the wall. You have several programs with no success, and now that you have one that is a success, focus on what works. Sell the equipment, focus on the NHRA, make some money, win races, and make money. Stop losing it. I don't know where you're getting the funds to keep your team going, but I don't want to see you go bankrupt, and right now, you just found out that you have a serious chance of making money. Make some serious money. Go for it. Okay. With all that said and done, I'm done for this week. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll be back next week with episode 74 of Driver Seat Blog Radio.